Good morning. Welcome to your first real assignment here, where we're gonna break out Excel and kind of get after it a little bit. So hope you guys can follow along. I'll probably later today send out another video that will get into your project one. We'll go over the startup and probably the opening day balance sheet, and I'll do these in separate videos. That way you can kind of start and stop and go and whatnot. And as I've said, what I'll do, I'm going to do the spreadsheet assignments. Your guys' quiz will kind of follow things that are in the book, and so I'm not really going to go over that. I'm not going to go over the PowerPoints. You guys can open the book and do the quizzes. I want to spend our time instead going over the thing that seems to often create the most problems when we look at financial analysis and those types of things, and that's getting right into the spreadsheet, or the questions that are in the book. And so your assignment anyhow, and again I apologize because whenever I do this, things slow way down, and that's happening as we speak. It wouldn't bother me so much if I could pause this thing while I'm waiting, but it slows down so much that I can't even get to the pause button. So you'll just have to listen to me babble for a little bit. So it's kind of too bad. I can show you little videos and all kinds of weird things, but it just gets so slow, so darn slow. Your assignment was to do problems 2, 3, 4, if I'm not mistaken. 7, 10, and 13. Okay, so there we go. 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, and 13. And so we'll go through and I'll try to give you some good examples here. Wow, it is really hideously slow, and for that I apologize. I may end up having to go home and do these videos at home. Alright. So let's start, well, you guys aren't assigned number one. Let's start with number one. And by the way, this would be a nice way to organize your assignments using Excel. And I'll kind of walk through some of those things too. And you'll see me using a few tricks. I think most of you are probably pretty familiar with Excel, but maybe not, and so you may learn a few tricks, as we go through this, and I'll try to be slow and point out when I'm doing those tricks. So anyhow, I decided let's take a look at problem number one, because it's similar to the problems 2, 3, and 4 actually that you have. And the problem reads, as I'm still waiting for my computer to even act here, the problem reads this. It says, low carb diet supplement Inc. has two divisions. Division A has a profit of $156,000 on sales of $2,010,000, and Division B has only able to make $28,800 on sales of $329,000. And of course, they're trying to show a lot lesser amount and trying to screw you up there a little bit, so you can usually kind of assume that when they use that kind of language. But in any event, we can take a look at that and say, well, what do we think here? Let's just organize things. So we've got Division A, right? And I put over here, I got my profits and I've got my sales. And so my Division A has a profit of $156,000, and it's got sales of $2,110,000. And how do I enter that? Well, $156,000. Okay, but I like to use my commas because then it's easier to tell if I actually have the right number in there or not. If I just had a normal number, right, and I'll get rid of those. And same thing here. For me, it's kind of hard sometimes to look at that, and without the commas, it makes it a little bit difficult. Now, the only negative with the commas is then it puts in the decimals, and so you can come up here and get rid of those, and it'll in that case it kind of widened my deal. And so when you see those number signs show up, you know that sometimes your column just isn't wide enough. And for those of you that don't know, you can come up here and you can widen that column or make it more narrow, you know, so that it kind of fits. You know, if I didn't want this much room between C, but I kind of like it, I can make that column a little bit smaller. So now, return on anything is the net income divided by whatever that anything is. And so in this case, it tells us, you know, based on the profit margins, return on sales, right, which division is superior. So return on sales is simply net income or profit, right, divided by sales. And so for each case, I simply come up here and I'll click on this particular cell right here. Okay, as my computer again is way behind what I'm doing, but I'll click on that cell. And hopefully my box will come up there. There we go. And equal or enter an equal sign is a nice way to start any equation. You can start them with a plus sign or a minus sign or an equal sign. Okay, and so I'm going to start, in this case, I'm going to start it with an equal sign if it'll let me here. Okay, equals. Try again, equals. Yeah, it's just being unbelievably slow. Again, I apologize. It's simply not wanting to work here. I'm in that box. I should be able to enter my formula, but it's slowed up my computer so much, and it's because the recording instrument, that BB flashback, I know it just uses all kinds of CPU. Now it's going to tell me that it's not responding or something. I have no idea. There we go. Now it's okay. Yay. Now it's putting in all the equals that I had in there. And I suppose if I were simply patient, it would catch up, but gosh. Okay, equals. There, I've got my equal sign. And then when I want to use, again, it's return on sales, so it's profit divided by sales. So I simply then have to click on my profit number, which is my $156,000, and then wait 10 minutes for it to actually respond. Hit my divided by, okay, which is right above my my number pad over there on the right hand side of my keyboard, and then click on this one by divided by my sales, and it nicely highlights those for me and puts them in different colors and everything, so I know what I'm doing. And then I hit enter and give it another 10 minutes and it'll actually calculate it. Okay, and that number originally came out to be, I'll show you what it looked like here, maybe originally. Right? It looked like this, 0.08, and it's probably even, oops, I'm going to click on here, right? Okay, a nice long decimal, and I wanted it to be a percentage because it was in a regular number, and remember, you know, 0.077 expressed as a decimal is going to be 7.76. Okay, so it rounds it up, so then I want to add decimals, so I need to click on the right one of these. Oops, decrease. I want to increase my decimal, so I'll click on this one. There we go. Okay, and then I do the same thing for division B, right? And actually I can just come here, and so you know I could right click on this, I could hit copy, and I can right click on here and hit paste, and in this case just an ordinary paste. We'll copy that same formula over, and it'll reference then the proper cells. Just like this came to the 2 cells above, this one would come to the 2 cells above, and so it would give me 8.75. So we see now, if I was to choose to invest in one of these 2 divisions, if I was running this company, I'd probably pick division B because my return is greater, right? Okay. One thing I didn't show you, I said this is a nice way to organize. It's also nice if you click on this, hit your control down, click on this one. Okay. It's kind of nice to highlight, for my sake, the answers, right? Pick a color, any color. I'll pick yellow this time. Okay. Then when I'm correcting, it makes it really nice. I can just pop and look at your answers. Okay. You'll notice down here that I've got different numbers here, and these numbers are the problem numbers in each case. And the way to do that, okay, if I added another sheet, I'll just give you an example. Okay, now maybe I wanted this to be, and in fact I'll just change it, I want it to be problem number, I right click, I'm sorry, and then I went up to where it said rename, and then I'll say this is going to be problem number 3-4, because I'm going to do that one a little bit later, or one kind of like that anyhow. Okay, so then it's changed, I just hit my enter. Okay, and I don't want it here, I want it after number 3 over here. I can just grab that and I can move it over there. Okay, and then I also want it to be bigger, so I can come over here and I can zoom it in. Okay, there we go. So let's take a look at problem number 2, and I did one like it, but I did change the numbers because I don't want to show you guys exactly what your answers are going to be. But problem number 2 says this. It says that database systems is considering expansion into a new product line. Assets to support expansion will cost $380,000. So in my case, I put the total assets are $500,000. So I just changed to the number. So pretend that's your $380,000, right? And then it says it is estimated that database can generate $1,410,000, and I picked $1,200,000. Again, just using little different numbers, and with an 8% profit margin. So I put a profit margin of 6%. Your guys is 8%, but it's the same thing. And remember, the profit margin is also known as return on sales, right? So my profit margin is my return on sales. So now, how do I get my net income? Okay, well, my net income is simply my profit margin then times my sales. Okay, so in my case, your number will be a little different. I just have to hit my equal sign, my 6% times my 1.2 million, hit my enter, and it does it. Wonderful. Okay, but then it also goes on to ask, it says, what would my return on assets be? Remember, return on anything is the net profit or the profit or net income. Lots of different names for that, right? Earnings after tax, la-da-da. Okay, so my net income or my profit is $72,000, and my assets, or for this problem it's asking for, was $500,000. So I simply have to come down here, okay, to a new box, okay, and put equals, and wait for it to respond. My net income, return on, net income is always whatever is my income divided, or return on anything is always my net income divided by whatever that anything is, and in this case it was total assets. I hit enter and I end up with 14.4%. Obviously you guys will come up with something a little bit different. Okay, 3.3, let's move on there. Same thing, I changed numbers a little bit. You guys have good old polyester dress shops. Can open a new store that will do some annual sales volume of $837,900. It will turn over its assets 1.9 times per year. The profit margin on sales will be 8%. What would net income and return on assets or return on investment be for the year? And again, what they're trying to do here, folks, is they're just trying to get you to look at some of these financial statements and understand that you can calculate a lot of different things by using a few of the numbers, you know, that are provided. And so it kind of helps you when you're breaking down financial statements later on. And we're just doing an abbreviated version, but when you look at big complicated financial statements, you can do the same thing, and find some numbers that are really kind of important. So let's take a look at what we got here. So polyester sales volume, and I just made my sales at $1 million instead of your guys's was $837,900. And I said that my asset turnover was 2. Well, what's asset turnover mean? Well, asset turnover means is how many times, whatever assets you have, how many times do you turn those over to reach the sales number that you need? We probably are more familiar with the term of inventory turnover, right? You know, if your average inventory is 500,000 and your sales were 2 million, your inventory turnover is 4. And we're kind of familiar with that. And asset turnover is a bit of a unique term because you don't actually sell all your assets, right? You might have plant and equipment, and real estate, and those types of things that you don't really sell, okay? But they kind of contribute. So this is just a number that we kind of like to, it speaks to operating efficiency basically, and so we kind of like to look at it. But it also is a bit of a kind of an oddball number because you don't really turn over those assets. You don't necessarily sell them. So anyhow, I chose to say my sales were $1 million. I chose to say that my asset turnover was 2, okay, and that my profit margin was 5.5%. So we got all the same data that you have. I just used some different numbers. So my net income then, right, income is equal to, just like we did on the prior one, my profit margin times my sales. So I was simply able to put equals and my profit margin of 5.5% times my sales of $1 million. So I should get 55,000, right? And then my total assets, well, how do I calculate my total assets? It doesn't give me that. Well, I know that my assets turned over twice in order to get sales of $1 million. So all I had to do here was say, let's take my sales and then divide it by my asset turnover, right? And that gave me total assets of 500,000, right? So I sold my assets basically twice to get that $1 million in sales. And now I can calculate my return on assets because it's my net income divided by my assets, right? Yeah, so simply equal to net income divided by total assets. Boom, 11%. And again, I want that to look nice, and so I will pick a color, and green this time. Let's go with green. Perfect. Okay. Let's move on to number 4 and kind of start one from scratch here just to give you guys an idea. So it's Billy's Crystal Stores, yeah. Has assets of nearly 6 million, right, and turns over its assets 1.9 times per year. So now it does give us our assets, right? So let's put in let's just type this in, total assets. Yeah, see, that got to be too wide, and so now I want to widen that out a little bit. I'm going to make that column nice and wide. Okay. And turns over its assets. So I got asset turn, and I'm going to abbreviate if that's okay. All right, so my total assets, your guys' is 5,960,000. I'm just going to use 4 million. Okay, and again, if I want to make that add the decimals, that's kind of nice. I can decrease my decimals. Okay, and you guys turn over your assets 1.9 times per year. I'm going to use 2 again just because. Easy number, right? But it'd be the same if it was 1.9. And my return on assets is 8%. So what's the firm's profit margin or return on sales? Okay. Well, if I know my total assets and my asset turn is 2, can I calculate my total sales? Pretty easy. Let's put that in next. All right? Sure. Because remember, on this one, we said that our total assets were 500,000, our asset turn was 2, and so our sales were $1 million, or twice that. So all I have to do is say that to get my total sales is equal to my asset turnover times my total assets. Ooh, 8 million. Cool. Okay, and then it says that my return on assets is 8%. So now I can figure out what my net income is, right? This is kind of like we figured out what our net income was when we knew what our return on sales were, right? So my ROA is equal to 8%, which I need to enter as a 0.08, right? okay, because 8% is in a decimal format is 0.08. Now I want to change it and make it look like a decimal, right? Okay. And so I can simply, what is the firm's profit margin? Well, first I need to figure out what my total net income is. And so I know that my return on assets is 8%. Well, then my net income is simply equal to my ROA times my total assets. Okay. So in my case, that would be 320,000, and I want fewer decimals. There's going to be a lot of times in this class where you need to extend the decimals out. Okay, for these problems, probably not. Okay, just getting to the decimal would be fine, and I don't really need to get past that for the most part. But some of the interest, or I shouldn't say that. Some of the percentages you probably want to get out past the decimal at least 2. Okay, so what's the firm's profit margin or return on sales? Well, now I know what my net income is, or my return is 320,000, and I calculated what my sales were. Okay, so I simply have to calculate ROS is equal to my net income divided by my sales in. Right. And I wanted that to look like a percent. So 4% is my return on sales. And again, that would also be called my profit margin. So I could do either. Okay. And I think that's the only one that it asks for. So I'll give that a nice looking color, and yeah, let's go with a pretty blue again. Okay, onward we go. You guys have to do 3.7, which talks about the Haynes Corp. Shows the following financial data for 2012-2013. I kind of took data from number 6, or Dr. Zhivago's, and I just kind of made some stuff up. But I set it up, you know, just like this. Set it up just exactly like it shows you, right? I have all my stuff here. I did some abbreviating, and you guys are welcome to do abbreviating too, as long as I can tell, you know, what we've got here. I've got sales, cost of goods sold, gross profit, sales and administrative expense, operating profit, interest, earnings before taxes, what my taxes will be at 35%, and my net income. Okay. One thing I like to do when I set these up, by the way, is that, okay, I plug in my sales, I plug in my cost of goods sold. My gross profit is equal to my sales minus my cost of goods sold. Okay, now I've got that formula in there. Okay, and I can put the same formula in here, and I just like to do that. I like to get in that habit of doing that. Sales and administrative expenses, it gives me, right, 302,000 according to the problem number 6. But again, my operating profit then is equal to my gross profit minus my sales and administrative expenses, okay, or 698. Interest it gives me. So my earnings before taxes then again is equal to my operating profit minus my interest, or that. Okay, taxes then I've got to calculate. What are my taxes going to be? They're going to be equal to my earnings before taxes times, it says 35%. Again, as a decimal, I would put that as 0.35. Okay, so I've got my earnings before taxes times my tax rate of 35%, or 0.35. So there's my taxes. My net income then is equal to my earnings before taxes minus my taxes. There we go. Okay, and again, I was able to, you know, copy some of these formulas over here and do those types of things. And I just made up these numbers for the year 2013. So you guys have similar things, and what it asks you then is a few things. It says, calculate for me, will you, the cost of goods sold to sales. Well, you know, it's telling you exactly what it wants you to do. So it wants you to take your, and I just put the formulas in kind of beside it here, and I said this is equal to then my cost of goods sold divided by my sales, cost of goods sold to sales. 64.16%. I had to change that to a percentage, which I've already done. And I did the same thing over here, right? My cost of goods sold divided by my sales. Now, it asks you too, is that increasing profit or decreasing profit? Well, what do we want? We want our cost of goods sold to be decreasing as a percent of sales. Okay, if it does that, then we should be increasing our profit, okay, or gross profit margin anyhow, right? Okay, and so this, I see that my cost of goods sold have decreased in relation to my sales, so that's a good thing. That's actually, even though this ratio has gone down, it increases, my profit. Okay. So then I come down here and it asks me to do my sales and administrative expenses also to sales. Okay. So these are some expenses to sales, and so again I put this as just simply equal to my sales and administrative expenses to sales, or divided by my sales number. Okay. 10.82%. And I did the same thing here, equal to my sales and administrative expenses divided by my sales, and I get 11.67%. Well, now this is an expense thing, and it's gone up, okay, and that's not good, right? That is going to decrease because the percentage has gone up. So in a relative term, or relative terms, that's going to decrease my profit in that case, right? Okay. And it asks me to do those. Then lastly, it says interest. And interest, oftentimes, if your sales go up, if you don't borrow any more money, your interest number might stay the same. Okay, and so we have to do that also as a percent of sales, just as equal to my interest divided by my sales. Okay, do the same there. And in this case, my interest expense relative to sales have decreased. Okay, and so that would have the effect of increasing, okay, my profit. And so that's all it asks for there, those three things, and you guys may come up with some different ratios and whatnot, and so you'll have to just think about what that means to your profit in order to answer that question. So onward then to number 9. You guys were assigned number 10, but I think number 9 is just about exactly like number 10, and so I can by the way, I should do this, and I can hold my control down, right, and I can kind of highlight all of these, and then I'm going to come up here and make those a pretty color so that it's easy for the instructor to see. Perfect. Okay, number 9. So number 9, it goes through, and again, this is just giving you some basic information and requiring you to calculate a whole bunch of stuff, okay, with some basic information, and so you got to kind of think this through. But I think your guys' is the same as number 9, and so if you follow along here, it shouldn't be too bad. And if you read the whole thing, it says network communication has total assets of $1.5 million, current assets of $612,000. It turns over its fixed assets 3 times a year. It has $319,000 of debt, and its return on sales is 8%. What is its return on stockholders' equity? My gosh. Doesn't even tell us what our equity is, and so we have to figure that out, don't we? So I kind of did things up here first. My top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things really have to do with the balance sheet, or it's just balance sheet items. And so I entered them in like this. I said for number 9, I have $1.5 million in total assets, and that's given to me. And I have $612,000 in current assets. Well, what does that make my fixed assets? Because that's part of the question. It doesn't tell me what my fixed assets is, so I have to figure that out. So my fixed assets are simply my total assets. So equal to my total assets minus my current assets. Okay. And then it gives me what my debt is, right? And why is that important? Well, we'll see here in a little bit. Okay, so my debt I just entered is $319,000. I could have entered that as a negative number, and I probably should have. Okay. So I'm going to enter that in instead as a negative number. That's going to screw up my other formula, so I'll have to do some fixing here, but that's okay. Okay. So my debt's $319,000. So my equity then, right? What's my equity? Well, equity is total assets minus total debt is equal to shareholders' equity, right? That's the accounting equation, right? Total assets equal liabilities plus owner's equity. Then you rewrite that, change things around a little bit. So my equity is actually equal to, and I hit my equals, hopefully this thing will, okay, my total assets minus my debt. Now I have my debt entered as a negative number, so I actually have to do this kind of funky then and hit a plus, okay, because it's plus and negative number. If you remember your old integers that you worked on in grade school, it makes my equity 1,181,000. That makes sense, right? 1,000,005 minus 319,000 should be that, okay? And it gives me what my return on sales is, 8%. Of course, I have no idea what my sales are. Wow. But if I read the problem a little bit further, it does tell me in my second sentence, it says it turns over its fixed assets 3 times a year. Okay, so remember, go back to those first couple problems that we did in fixed assets or asset turnover. Basically, if we know that we're turning over our fixed assets 3 times a year, it simply means that we're selling an equivalent to 3 times our fixed assets. Okay, and that's going to give us what our sales number is. And so to figure out what my sales are, I simply have to say that it's equal to my fixed asset turnover, or 3 times my fixed assets of 888,000. I get sales of $2,664,000. Awesome, right? But I still don't know what my return on sales is. What's return on sales? Well, it's my net income divided by my sales. Okay. Well, I've got what my return on sales is. So what I want to figure out actually is what my net income is. And so as we did in a number of the other problems, it's simply equal to then our return on sales, which is given to us, is 8%, times the sales that we calculated. So my net income's $213,120, but I'm not done yet because they want to know what my return on equity is. Return on anything is just net income divided by that anything. In this case, it's return on equity, or ROE. Okay, so simply return on anything is equal to my net income divided by that anything, or equity, return on equity, 18.05%. Cool. That went pretty easy, although it's really, really slow how it's operating. I'm going to give this a nice color. I hope your guys' computers aren't as slow as this one. Okay, blue. I always kind of like blue. Now you guys have one more problem, and that is problem number 13. Unfortunately, problem number 13 isn't really an Excel problem, right? It says front beam lighting company has the following ratios compared to its industry for 2013. It has a return on assets that's significantly higher than the industry, but a return on equity that is significantly lower than the industry. It says no, you don't have to do any numbers, you don't have to do any calculating. It's just a one sentence answer is all that's required. So you're just going to have to think that through, how get that return on equity ratio be less favorable when it has a much higher return on assets. Okay, think that through. I'm not going to help you there. You might have to read a little bit in the book and figure that one out. With that should get you through your problems, other than not much help for problem 13. Sorry about that. And I hope you guys wish you well on that. Everybody's team won in the playoffs. Now you might have to listen to me babble again for a little bit while my deal tries to shut off. So you can close down now if you want, because I'm done, other than I got to try to get this darn thing to shut down. Which hopefully won't take forever, but it might. It could. Yeah, okay, well. Hmm.